The hip-hop writer is a creator, composing understanding words of culture brilliance, powering a rebalance of the elements equally. Pages of rejuvenated reaffirmation, simply the almighty leadership of insightful craft work that stands to build through any confrontation born to be. Yet his daily duty is as a journalist that questions properly, uses his ears for the good to filter the real, and as the art decays by dilution, he concentrates the best again and again, exposing it in the print. Today's journalist and tomorrow's historian, he listens to share. Here is that necessary attempt executed again and again and again. This is the Power Right Show on S.STREET Media. This is your brother, the lone low life with the home-sewn garment, the Boricua with the build, the true and living, stepping in score, Sunyez Allah, a.k.a. Skillustrator Low. And we're on S.STREET Media, the evolution of media. Every intrigue will have its own show. Every incredible thought will have its own episode. And every timeless insight will be archived. S.STREET Media. Here we are, another episode of the Power Right Show. It's great to be with you all today, you know. I got to start because I'm still affected by it. On my trip here to the studio, taking the L train, New York City, right, for those worldwide watching. And I got to give a salute. I would give a shout out, right? I got to give a salute to the gentrifier on the L train this morning, you know, on the way here, because his underarm funk was so potent. You know what I mean? I had some work to do for today's show, and I wanted to do it right. I didn't want to fall asleep, and I trained hard today, played with my daughter a lot today, so I was real tired, and his underarm funk was such a potent smell. It was like a smelling salt. You know what I'm saying? I think with oppression, we're in war, you know, and I felt like I had been taken out. I had been taken out of the game, and this white man came here and showed me the aroma of racism. That's the aroma of racism. Yo, I know what racism smells like. That shit, that shit woke me up, man. It kept me sharp for today's show. So let's see if I have some stuff for you today. You know what I mean? Salute that gentrifier. Inspiring. You know what I mean? And you know, riding the L train in New York City, there's a whole bunch of gentrifiers. So who knows how much more inspiration I'll have for future shows as we go along, though. You know, who knows? Maybe one day you'll know what the aroma of racism is. You know what I mean? But I got to give a real shout out, a real salute, you know, to DJ Toshi, Classic Storm Radio. We, by the time you're listening to this, though, it should be out. Did a great show with Trife Diesel, Trife the God, right? Trife Diesel, Woo affiliate, TMF crew, Staten Island, right? Shaolin. He has a new album out called Project Pope 2, and man, it really crept up there. So, you know, I really had the chance to interview and build with someone that I usually don't go for, you know? In other words, not because of his musical gifts, but because I'm always trying to interview people that don't get that shine, people who I think is the next level, not people that have been surviving. Like, you know, he really came up through the dark ages, those 2000s, you know, when so many of the greats didn't get to graduate to a potentially greater commercial form that they deserved. So it was great to build with Trife. His album Project Pope 2 is on his website, trifediesel.com. It's also on the Bandcamp, and I think the Bandcamp links are on that website too. So you can get it either way that you want. It's going to be on all the media streams. But it was an interesting build, and it led to some ideas that I was thinking of because, you know, when I film with Toshi, I always give him too much talk, you know? And this is why I have the Power Right Show, you know what I mean? I need space to build. But we had a really great build, and there were some ideas that he brought out in songs that he has, like Multimedia and other songs, you know, a very subtle boom bap project. The typical excellence that you see in this era, this decade of the invisible renaissance, where boom bap records are just like the old jazz records, where it all sounds the same, people playing horns, they're doing the same drumming, da-da-da. But when you listen clearly and closer, you start to hear something different, you know what I mean? You hear something more detailed. And that's what we get here, you know, with Trife Diesel's album, and we talked a lot about it. Hey, you know, throughout this broadcast, you'll be hearing instrumentals, select instrumentals, and the one that you just heard today's show, it'll all be from this one brother here named Japheth. Um, this brother's an MC and he's a producer, and he surprised me too because I didn't know he's a producer um, out in Massachusetts and stuff. Boricua out there, and his Bandcamp is Japheth Music 23. That's JAFET MUZIC 23, and that's the numbers 23. .bandcamp.com, and he's got one album there. It's an instrumental album called Big Hitman. I think we played I think we were playing definitely the King Japheth instrumental. That happened to be my favorite. I let my producer pick whichever one he wanted. They're all good, and he happened to pick my favorite anyway. But we'll be hearing those beats as we go along with the show. He's also on IG. Hit him up on Instagram. See what the brother's all about. Pester him about getting his music out because he's really developing. And that's Japheth Music, JAFET MUZIC. That's his handle on the Instagram. And what are we doing here on the Power Right Show? The Power Right Show is what? The Power Right Show is the show that is giving you the details from my perspective as one of the pioneers of the hip hop writer element. I want to give you some more historical background. I had tried every other known elements known. MCing wasn't my thing. I felt like I didn't have a voice that was on par or as developed as the artist that I was hearing. And this is my perspective. The difference between now and then is that because, and I'm just throwing this out there, this may be a very big reason, but because competition was stronger, penalties were greater, but also because there was a longer development period. People starting the culture earlier in their life, seriously starting the culture earlier in their life, and then developing a music that takes a long time, developing lyrics that go a long time, and also in the streets of New York per se. Let's just talk about New York. Streets of New York having much more knowledge-based insights, whether it be spiritualities as the 5% Nation of Gods and Earths that I represent, whether it be the insights that were the collective unity and struggles of entire groups, like the low lives, whether it be the criminality and the more organized criminality in different types of ways that we see of any of the crews. But there always was a knowledge base, and that comes about because the foundations of hip-hop being in that melting pot of the Bronx. I don't say South Bronx because there's always there's discrepancy whether it was the South Bronx or the West Bronx, but it was the Bronx to me because it's not where these things were created, like invented each part, each element. It's really where they synthesize, and a good example of that is the dance. You see? So, and another great example of that is the core element, the actual music, the DJ, because the most important binding element is the DJ and DJ Kool Herc specifically devising the break, devising the idea of repeating the same loop section of a song, the section break of a song, right? And remember, a break is an older musical term that really just means isolation of the music. So when you hear old jazz records, you're hearing isolations. When you hear, let's say, a jazz solo, that would be a break. In other words, the other musicians would line out, and then it would be a break, And then let's say Coltrane would go in on his sax solo, Miles would go in on his trumpet solo, for one of his beautiful legendary ballads or whatnot, and have you and all that. But the reason I say the dance and the reason I say that the break are so important in making this a reality of the Bronx and the synthesis is because once that happens, right, you have Kool Herc devising this way of making the break, but then you have the actual dancers they're so important because they're bringing different styles of dance to the party, right? So now it depends on Cool Herc picking selections that um, that that they approve of, right? And that's important though. We forget that a music is decided too by the music, the sound of the music is very much relegated in the very beginning, in its roots, not in its peak. There's a difference. In its roots is very relegated to the approval of the audience. And that's why we see music that develops is usually more frivolous in the beginning. And then when it develops, when the musicians are on their own and they develop and they realize what they can do, they start exploring though. And music, especially black music, which is really the core of this entire universe's music, becomes more listening music. Happens with all of them. All of black music. You can name almost any one. And the only difference between ones you say didn't have it happen and others that did is probably the length period of its survival before commercialization. So how long was it able to be recorded before it was grossly commercialized, right? So we see some musics now that they'll never get that chance, you know what I mean? Like, we're never going to hear righteous fucking reggaeton, you know what I mean? It's so commercialized and so brutalized that it'll never have that format where artists will be like, look, I want to give something deeper. I'm a more deeper artist. Nah, they're easily replaced because the sound has been preserved at a very diluted stage, you know? But here with the synthesis of styles, what you have is the dancers selecting the type of music, and that's why the breaks that we hear, Latin, right through, and I say Latin polyrhythms, which really means African polyrhythms, obviously preserved by those Latin original people, those black and brown Latins in the Caribbean. So you see the polyrhythms of the funk affected. You hear the drum solos and the horn sections of all the musics really affected. And what's amazing about hip hop, what I find amazing about hip hop and the frivolous origins, and these are just notes to take into consideration because they don't have a question that bursts or a thesis point here. But what happens is this, right? During the 1970s, the Bronx era in the 1970s, right? Salsa is reaching a peak, so it is burgeoning toward more lyrical efforts, right? Technically, if you really listen, the lyrics are becoming better and more detailed battle lyrics, which means that once that happens, then once the details of the lyrics become more heavy battle lyrics, then what also happens is that now you get artists that start speaking about issues and peoples. And then that leads to artists like, if we just finish the example easily, people like Ruben Blades, right? And I think that Siembra is still the greatest selling salsa album, right? But then on the other side, we also have the peak, the monumental peak, even higher lyrical peak to me of as far as content, depth, insight of roots reggae, you know? And that has lots of developments, but it happens to hit its peak. So the 70s Bronx, it seems like it doesn't need hip hop to be their expressive force as far as deeper issues because there's other musics binding them. But the people don't know it. We're so separated from ourselves. It's very possible, and it really was the case, where an African American in the 70s South Bronx, a youth, is not really up on any of the lyrics of any of the roots reggae that a Jamaican youth is on. And that's what makes it so amazing what Kool Herc was doing, because he was. And then it became the spirit of hip hop to say, well, now by sampling and finding music from everywhere, now we have a bed, a historical bed. You see, because of the obsession with crate digging, it also gives hip hop culture a historical framework of research. So not only are you researching the artist to find breaks, but eventually people start researching the histories behind certain records, behind certain vinyls, you know? So like when you get albums that have militant covers, like, you know, everybody has Manteca from Bobby Hutcherson, that album, right? And I'm gonna pull it up here. I want to get this right. I want to get this right, though. Right? And everybody has that record because there's a lot of famous samples on that, you know. But I forget what samples though. But once you, it's not a manteca. It's montada. I'm thinking of manteca, but it's montada. But that famous album from Bobby Hutcherson is like a basic crate. It's a basic crate. But when someone was doing research on their hip hop and they're getting breaks, then they go back to getting more out of that artist, and then now they start to research, and they might hear records like Now, that featured Harold Land, that had different, more militant songs like Black Heroes and other songs like that, right? And those are just years apart, you know what I mean? It might lead him to collect Willie Colon, who was pretty deep in his own, or collect, let's say, Araberto Santiago as a sonero, and then you collect all of his stuff that he sang chorus on, not just solo, and then you might get Conspiracion, which had album. They were basically called The Conspiracy, and then they had album covers like they were plotting against the government and all that kind of stuff. So you get the militant albums, you know what I mean? So all this stuff gives you a history, like, hey, why did they make these kind of records back in the day? And then now you start to learn about Young Lords, Black Panthers, and all these kind of stuff. So the crate digging of music leads to the digging of historical facts, history that we did not know. And add to that the knowledge base that was around. The 5%ers, we were around, right? Everybody was around. The rosters were around. And then that becomes a framework for what Africa Bambaataa continues the legacy of the Ghetto Brothers. He continues the legacy of the Ghetto Brothers, which were the Boricuas that were really standing up to uniting black and brown and those issues in the Bronx. The reason I say it continues because they had a heavy gang culture, right? And I remember I had described a lot of my low wears, like low life with the home sewn garment, right? The patch, I got my butterfly swords patch, right, on my polo. This culture of throwing patches that represent what you're about, that comes about from the 60s, those brothers out, those gangs, all those proliferation of gangs. And once they start becoming united, and then Africa Bambaataa takes on the mantle that Ghetto Brothers left behind, then what happens is you not only see a unification of the streets behind that logic, but by the way, you also see a unification of the music, because if I could give a musical route, the Ghetto Brothers were not great musicians. If you get their solo work, they were not great musicians. A lot of this stuff was so off key, but it was like a lot of stuff. Let's not forget, early Willie Colon records are horribly off key. If you play them loud, they will shriek on your systems and all that kind of stuff. And Lavoe's voice was so powerful and piercing that it actually was not EQ'd well. It's like the first Willie Colon record, El Malo, the bad boy. That's a really bad record, man. Really bad record. In all that, it was bad, dope, bad, shitty. Yeah, it was everything. But it was raw. It was raw. And that made those genres so raw. But that musical legacy of the Ghetto Brothers, and they were one of the examples of mixing in the Latin polyrhythms and the funk together, you know? Of course, crate diggers like Bam and Grandmaster Flash and Herc and them, they found better polyrhythms, like like the Incredible Bongo Band, of course, where you get Apache, those are better groups than, so they found much better works and stuff, and all of this. The reason I'm saying all of this, right, is because when we have a music that was dealing with all these elements, right, they all synthesized in the Bronx, and I said that all to say this. These were elements that people's different cultural lifestyles were being made and were being embraced and then decided upon as an element. So we have a list of cultural expressions we could have to rebel against things and to have a definitive way of expressing ourselves. So we get the DJing, you get MCing eventually out of that, right? The graffiti, which is embraced, it's already there, it's embraced. And then you have the B-boy element. I was there doing all of those, and I was a young B-boy, just as something you do in the street, not something that I kept to. Not something that I would say I was any level worthy of anything, right? Just had fun with it. But here's the thing, right? When I started to write, the spirit of it, finding your own unique way, wasn't just making sure you do one of the elements. The more I started to realize I was always a writer, that this was my culture, then I knew that the only way I could do hip hop was by figuring out my own element. And I'm saying that to say this, the main message. You don't have to MC. You don't have to b-boy. You don't have to DJ. You know what I mean? Like for me, for example, I tried DJing, but I found DJing very limiting. I didn't want to pick someone else's work to represent my thoughts. So that wasn't good enough for me. You know what I mean? So I never really focused on it. You know what I mean? And maybe I was too critical of the music too. And this is where the place is perfect for me as well. But I implore everyone to really think about making their own element. You know, in the Gospel of Hip Hop, KRS-One's Gospel of Hip Hop, that 800-page tour de force, right? You know, he names like 12 elements though, and he still don't name mine. So you could still make something out of nothing. You know what I mean? That's what this is all about though. As long as it has that grit, it has that countercultural element, it has that rebellious tone, and hopefully in this development, it has a revolutionary tone where it's seeking to change something for the better and destroy something that was wrong completely. Not just embracing it, but completely. And those are where the contradictions of hip-hop come from. We don't necessarily, it's countercultural. I say at its peak and probably to my liking. But a lot of it is basically rebellious assimilation. You know? It often detours back to rebellious assimilation. But that was a tour there. But someone who represented what I think is the core of hip hop. Like if I was to give a dictionary element, I said, what's a hip hop music group that defined everything about hip hop? Like what it ought to be, how do you make it, what does a song sound like, what does an MC do, what are the ethics of the MC, and what does he represent ethically on the mic? Man, I'd have to bring it to Gangstar. I always bring Gangstar. Guru and DJ Premier, they've always been my pick. And on this day that we're recording, it's another born day for Guru, the God, right? Remembered in perfection, R.I.P. And you know, I wanted to give that story, but I don't want to give it on his born day about my digital digital run-in with and I even hate to say his name, but I'll say it once so you know what I'm talking about. But in fact, you know what? I won't say his name, but that digital run-in with that guy that blood sucked the latter part of Guru's career and acted like he knew about Gangstar and acted like he wasn't just fucking the whole shit up, really. And we had a little altercation. The problem was that when I invited him to meet up, though, so we could settle it the way it ought to be, and really, right, he really wasn't keen on my neutral spot, you know. I guess it wasn't a neutral spot, you know. He said he was a 5% of his guy, so I said, you know, come around the law school in Mecca, and then we could go around the back. We go behind the Apollo, and you know, I'll sing you some songs with the fist, you know. Just like the legends, all the legends from Aretha to JB and everybody in there, right? But it never happened. I don't want to give the details to this story. I just want to give a simple story. The most simple story I have. I have one funny story and I have one simple story. I just want to give the simple story. You know, I decided to go wait when, what was I forgot the name of the double album that Gangstar released in 99, Full Clip. There we go. You got to remember, once you say it's Full Clip, do you want to mess with it? It always comes back. I always come back. How could I forget, though, right? Right? And I said, you know what, though? I just want to shake Guru's hand, man. Just want to shake his hand. So I waited on Fat Beats, the line, you know. And mind you, right, I never was one of those hip hop writers and publications that go skip the line and say, "Hey, I write for Double XL. Like, totally let me in." You know, I should be able to like go in the line and shit. You know, I didn't want to. I didn't never use any of those affiliations, and I never even tried. And I'm saying like not just freelance, but when I was working with what's his name? When I had the editor title at other big magazines, I never even tried to get a press pass. I just wanted to get in because the pass that they would give me, they would make me go to whack shit. You know, so if you're in a big magazine though, and I say, hey, look, give me a press pass. Yeah, and they go, yes, Sunez, you need a press pass. Then they give me a press pass, and then they send me to some shit that I don't want to see. You know what I mean? I'm gonna use my press pass to go into all these other places and stuff, and then who cares? Because the press pass, well, the places I'm going to, they don't take the press pass. You know what I'm saying? Like, who the fuck are you? You know what I mean? Like, nobody cares if you wrote about this shit. You know what I mean? So, you know, because when you were a writer in a magazine back in the day, a lot of your black book of names and addresses and numbers, it's really not yours. You had to always give it up. You had to give up your interview clips. And you didn't have the power you had to, like today, to say, listen, yeah, I got you. Definitely gonna write about you. So our forums may not be as big as the pop forums, you know what I mean? Like, you know, like the trash can freshman cover, right? But we actually can say we'll put a quality piece for you and put it in there, you know? So it's a big difference. But I was in college, right? And college, by the way, back in the days, the colleges, I don't know if this is everywhere. It might have just been the colleges in New York City and the New York area because hip-hop was big. Man, we got mailed everything in the college newspapers. So I was at Baruch College. The Ticker was a newspaper. And I was getting all types of stuff. Like, we get these wonderful-looking folders with a bio insert. We get it, and sometimes you get lucky. You might get a T-shirt or something sent to you and all that. But because there's a lot of people working in there, you had to hustle in there and make sure you get that mail quick. But ain't nobody was taking my shit, you know, when it was hip-hop. And I got the whole press kit. I lost that folder, man. And that T-shirt don't fit no more. That, you know, it's all fucked up. I did everything with it. I worked out with it, everything. But the Moment of Truth in 1998, we got that album ahead of time, and it wasn't one of those samplers. The real CD from New Tribe, right? They sent the whole CD, the official CD. They just punched a hole in the barcode. Got the album, and it was incredible. Blew my mind. Moment of Truth. Just like all the gangster out. Once Daily Operation dropped, every single no, not even the earlier one, Step in the Arena. One Step in the Arena dropped. They all blew my mind. But once Daily Operation dropped in '92, to me that was like, oh, it's all classic. This is next level classic. I found all of them to be classic. But Moment of Truth blew me away, and I had tickets to go to the release party. You know what I'm saying? And and that was another story. That's a Primo story, so I'll leave that one out. But for Full Clip, right? I had bought that one. I had waited online at Fat Beats. I was gonna buy it, and I bought it, and I got to meet Guru, and it was just an honor to tell him that how he influenced me. Me being the God I had just gotten knowledge of self, and I said, "Yo, peace, man. Like a lot of stuff that you said, you know, inspired me to get the knowledge of self." And it was just a nice moment. I didn't know it would be the only moment that I would ever have and stuff like that. And, you know, I never tried to interview him because I really was in disagreement with everything that was going on with Solar. You know, that guy that I didn't want to mention. But that's why I didn't try. And magazines they didn't care for that stuff. So I didn't even try. But happy born day to Guru, man. You are definitely missed. And I think for me personally, I don't say with his death, but for some reason with the way his returning kind of felt like everybody started to like return for health reasons and other things like that in a faster pace. You know, this decade has seen a faster pace of people return for all the wrong reasons, you know what I mean? But I just want to say one thing, right? And I'm gonna have more detailed I want to have more detailed parts because I like to give history of where I'm from, where I come from. One of those things that cannot be ignored about my history uh, in this music is also the lineage that I come from as a 5%er, part being God of the 5% nation of gods and earths. If there is one organization, one group of men, women, and children that isn't really a group of men, women, and children, it's the nation of gods and earths. It's not a club. You don't get a card. You know what I mean? You don't get a card though. I don't swipe my, like I teach at the school. I don't have like a green card for teachers, and then I swipe it. You know what I mean, to go in. We should have something to swipe though, cause there'd be mad niggas coming in there, and I gotta teach some savage niggas. Cause let me tell you something. Harlem is where you get every type of religion that you have ever heard of coming in. Everything. I have heard everything under the sun. You know. But the idea is this, right? If what we teach is something that is valid by study of science and mathematics, and we give a mathematical structure, meaning supreme mathematics, that is really just a logic system, which is a necessary foundational form of mathematics that allows you to use everything else. Every science book that you read, everything about science, whether it's the social sciences or any other type of science, from biochemistry to quantum mechanics, what allows people to form questions that develop theses or hypotheses to develop answers or more questions is the ability to put things together in a logical, mathematical form. In other words, to make sense out of things. And that's our foundation. This doesn't have you can't be in an organization like that. You know what I mean? You can't fill out a form for that shit. You know? You can fill out forms to be a fake fuck. They got forms for that. You know what I mean? I think there's an IG. If my producer comes with it, with that research, there is a handle for that on the IG. But I don't know what it is though. I stopped following a long time ago. Cause sometimes you want to see opposite ideas to get news ideas, but it was just too stressful. You know what I mean? But the thing is this, right? When you're dealing with something, right, you deal with something because it's right and exact. You don't deal with it because everybody else is falling victim or horrible to work with. That's the same thing with music. You don't leave a musical style because no one else is doing it and it's not making money and it's not really the way to go. You leave a musical style because you as the artist have drained it out of everything that you could mine out of it. So for example, most people don't like the way Miles Davis went, right? And he went into funk. He developed so many subgenres of jazz that he went into stuff that people are like, what the hell is he doing? Because we wanted that classical modal jazz, the peaks of jazz, but he went out of that. So his funk, his jazz funk was actually doing less jazz, meaning less improvisation, even though it still is jazz because it has the blues in it. And technically, if you really think about it, all the music has blues in it, but jazz has a special affinity to always be drawn to it. That's its core sound. That's its core vibe. But if we did it in hip hop, maybe we could say the RZA. You know, like, why did he leave the sound that he had? But the more that you hear it, RZA probably had a lot more great records with him with the classic sound. That's undeniable. None of us believe that he exhausted it. But for him, I felt it was genuine. I felt like it was genuine. Right? I said, I'm making up fucking words here. I felt it was genuine and not disingenuous because he had so many new ideas musically. However, what happens is that, like everything, when you go with hip-hop particularly, and I keep saying this, it's probably one of the most controversial things I've been thinking as far as musically. Hip-hop's foundation is a lot of shitty music, man. Hip-hop's foundation is shitty music. It's disco, a lot of basic breaks, and let's keep it very real. The main foundation of hip-hop music is James Brown. And James Brown, if you listen to musicians on a higher scale, that isn't considered as profoundly deep as other types of music that were made during that time period. Now, this isn't to bomb it because I think simplicity has its supremacy. And nowhere is James Brown more of my favorite than I love James Brown. There's if you don't have at least 200 James Brown songs in your collection, you have a weak collection. You have a weak collection. It's weak. But what I mean to say is this: as far as exploration and stuff. Now, that doesn't mean that a lot of bullshit music though isn't more complex. I find a lot of what's the word for that? That a lot of progressive jazz, not the stuff that Coltrane was doing. That's just weird and sound like Sun Ra. I'm not talking about stuff like that. I'm talking about stuff like Chick Corea and Return to Forever and things like that. That stuff sounds real boring to me a lot of times, and it doesn't have that much depth to it, and it sounds like the fathers of today's gentrifiers. Like if they made music, like what would it sound like? Like it fits perfectly, and I still don't always get into it as well as I could. But some of the simplest music has some of the most complex ideas, like the whole George Clinton catalog, you know, and that couldn't be called simple by any means. You know, so when we look at it like that, it certainly has a different perspective. But what I'm saying is this: when you make music, it has to, as an artist, what is genuine to me is that you have mined everything that you felt you could mine in one lane. It doesn't mean that an artist, if he's really dealing with art, he can't judge when you are not or are tired or not of the crack. That's as hard to judge as like a guy selling out, you know? That's why we laugh at sellouts. You know, we keep looking at successful sellouts. And that's why we go, yo, 6ix9ine, he's pulling in mad niggas and shit, right? Do you know how many other brothers did the same coonery and didn't hit? Same exact coonery. And now they're walking the streets trying to look for a job, though, with tattoos of shit they don't even know what it's about on their face. You know what I mean? And they're looking at him, it's like, listen, with that face like that, I don't think you could sell this Starbucks coffee. You know, you look like an idiot. You know, so they only take a certain amount of idiots. They only take a certain amount of buffoonery. You know what I mean? Just like Hollywood, though. They only deal with one Puerto Rican actress at a time. And because J-Lo doesn't seem to die, well, then that's it. You get nobody else. There's nobody else. You know what I mean? Get one person. And I'm saying that because I think J-Lo's a great actress. I think she does everything else shitty. Except dancing, but, you know, come on. The world needs another dancer. The world needs another dancing spick, right? We need more Puerto Ricans dancing. Nobody said nobody, never, right? I'm not going to walk around. I could walk around through every Boricua neighborhood, though. Nobody says, you know what, though? Sunyas, you need to start dancing in your show because we don't have enough of that. I said, nigga, what are you watching? What are you watching? They got niggas dancing 24/7, you know? Fucking Louis Fonzi bitch, you know? But aside from that, right? The music, the details. I'm gonna explore this more in other episodes, right? But like this idea of a musician exploring things, it's why sometimes when we talk about like and dislike, they always affect the music. And one of the dumbest things people say is like, all music is about taste and stuff. It's about, you know, it's not about anything else. It's about taste. Then how come when we look at graph charts, I'm making one up, though, right here. Look at my hands. They go up and down, right? How come we look at a dumb motherfucker, though, right? This is a dumb nigga. And the dumber he is, though, the stupider the music he likes, though. How come that trend is consistent? And then the smarter one, the more complex the music is, the more complex he tends to like his music. There's a damn correlation to it, which means this. It means that education of the music and the intensity of the music does change with the person. There's actually a lot of books written on this, the mathematics of music and the way the ear takes in music, and it's a balance of complexities. You know, music is seen to be seen bad when it becomes too complex. That's really the threshold in a lot of scientific studies. When the music is too complex, then it's like, I don't like that shit. That's just nerd shit. You know what I mean? So basically, because most of the populace is kept dumb, they like a very dumb music because there's somebody out there listening to like Nicki Minaj going, yo, this was deep. You know, like those memes that they quote like a Cardi B line and say, yo, when she said that cornflakes get soggy when you leave it there too long. I was feeling that. I was feeling that. That was in my heart. That was in my heart. Yo, that was me right there. And we're like, yeah, okay. So the depth chart, let's call it the depth chart. It changes. But as a music, if you're studying music, you want to be able to know your like and dislikes so you could actually eliminate them. And the ultimate gift is that records that were too complex for you, you may not love them like you never would love them, but you'd appreciate them more. I'll give you an example. Let's see an example. Two examples, because we talk about jazz and funk, right? I'm East Coast, so all the samples, we got love for James Brown. Hard breaks, loud out there, basic tough singing going in. Then you see all the samples from the West Coast, and they're all hand clap snares, 808 drums that are, and that shit gets kind of boring, you know what I mean? Those type of drums, we were like, that doesn't smack, And it takes certain people that are special that really know how to do it. Like, Wu-Tang Forever, It's Yours is really like a West Coast track. But that shit slaps, right? That he made the drum clap snare so thick on It's Yours. It was impeccable. But because I had to learn my ear and say, listen, for the education as a listener, as a writer of this, I can't cover hip-hop and really understand it if I don't know my Parliament Funkadelic and everything from all the side groups, from Parlet on, right? If I don't know all of that stuff, it's education, right? Just like if you James Brown, you got to know about Bobby Bird, you got to know all this stuff, right? So it took me years to really, after I collected all the music, just to have it. It took me a long time to go back to listen to it, to really learn about it. And the best way I did that was like, listen, why don't I learn about the experience of what it was to make these records? And when I learn about the experience to make these records, then I'm really going to come to appreciate the music. And when we're listening to hip-hop albums, right, what we want to do is you want to eliminate some of that. You want to eliminate that like and dislike and say, what was it that the artist was thinking when he was doing this? Is it a worthy goal? Is it worthwhile? It still might be trash to you, but you could come to some more appreciation, because that's what we're here for. It's appreciation of the illness, depreciation of the whack. But it all goes back to my initial point. Why does that music have to do, that type of listening, have to do with something about being part of a group that says they have a truth about this or a truth about that? Whether you're doing hip-hop, whether you're dealing with the knowledge itself, you don't leave things because other people leave them. You deal with things because it's truthful to you, the art that you were creating, or it's truthful to all the science that you have led. I find it funny that, let's say if there was a science that said that the original man is God, that certainly would be confrontational and looked down upon and oppressed in this society where God is taught as a mystery in the sky, or energy, or another being that is mysterious, right? And certainly not those black people that are so down and downtrodden, and certainly not a unity of black people that's saying that the black diaspora is one unity. There's all type of controversial statements. So how could you just dismiss the worth of something based on the collective effort by the people with that information? It is so difficult to uphold things that are correct that the populace does not see. You know what I mean? A lot of people walk around today and it's a fun fact that pork is bad for you. But at one time it wasn't a fun fact. You know what I mean? It was a stupid idea. Right? And people kept plugging at it. They knew that there was a science and they kept plugging at it. You know what I mean? At one time, though, it was conspiracy theorists, though, when brothers say, yo, man, don't have the fluoride, man. That's no good for your teeth and stuff. But now they conveniently sell you fluoride-free toothpaste. There's a reason for that. There's a reason that consensus changes. But there's certain individuals that always have to be maligned in order for those things to happen. And when dealing with a music like hip-hop, you can't just say boom bap is dead because somebody else is not doing it. That's not a good enough reason. Has it been mined? Has it been explored? I keep listening to old crates I have, and I see so many samples that I'm like, this thing is going so many places. You know what I mean? But what is this all about? What is this all about as far as like the art and art? I want to give you some art and art. I always give you a little bit of art on art. And today I wanted to read you. I didn't make a title for this one yet. I didn't really make a title for this one. But we'll just call it, I don't know. We'll leave it untitled though. But it's off the recent piece that I wrote in premierhiphop.com on August Green's album. That's with the supergroup with Common and Robert Glasper and Kareem Riggins, you know. A really deep work, man. It's one of those, they grow more in you because the quality of the musicianship, it hits you. So it's fun to have a favorite pop rapper, you know. So I wrote this. I said his fucking mind was dressed trans real. Love and loyalty were really for the other. A hustler who wins. Respect as fickle as the swoosh. Hiking concrete with foam posits frothing by the socks. All his work is ready to pitch disease. How? It's like all he read was sour dreams of blundered branding. But the sun is shining and equalizing, zigzag zigging. Equestrian with a swinging hammer. Really, the machete or some kind of percussive knives butterflying. Burning bridges because he'll swim you 9,000 miles arrogantly, but always mightily. His fight will be a contradiction like being the blackest of the black brothers, the yellow seed of the brown people. Idealistic saviors from the poetry society that talk bad about the English. Or more Fideli and Alpha, supply and demand our understanding to their knowledge. Their cake and bricks are for man-tanning parties of gore and building blocks for crass spouses. Thee wed them re-up till. So we over here, we're going to pay our own reparations with students flooding abroad. Our common competition will be the last line written, and bitten is the past participle of the burying of our principle. Climb 2 L's, a better ladder to prosperity. Creators create creation, like a linoleum cosmos lit by a backspinning sun. My clothing is still common, from an old Bronx designer circa 1967. Never hiding the realness, never respect fake broadcasting. I tell you, no use to one's heart if it stays buried in the chest. That was the piece I wrote for August Green. If you notice it, it's a long piece, so I spread it out through the piece and stuff. But lately, a lot of these pieces, it's not just a review of that piece, but it's also an exploration of the ideas that these albums bring out. You know, what we're seeing with albums like Rock Marciano's Rosebud's Revenge, what we're seeing with albums like August Green and others, we're seeing like people taking progressive ideas, other people embracing other people's progressive ideas and taking them to their own extremes, you know? And so we're seeing different levels, you know? And I think sometimes for some people, the term boom bap is a very limiting term. It's not really what we was thinking about, you know? So, you know, so it's boom bap, but then what happens with art and music that doesn't have drums on it, you know? Is that still boom bap? Where would we classify that, you know? If I'm being lazy looking for an umbrella term, we might have to just use boom bap for all that stuff, you know? Everything that's still real, you know? But I had some loose thoughts, right? Going into something else, loose thoughts. You know, I told you I was building with Tribe Diesel, and he has a song, I think it's multimedia, and he says, it's all about your brand, building off of what you represent, right? And for me, I think one of the most disgusting things is branding. I see it as a disgusting word because it has no sincerity. But it's got to get done if you control your whole career. You know, so it sucks, right? You know, like when people say, yeah, I'm doing my brand. And, you know, it eventually, especially in the beginning of this decade, we didn't hear that word too much. And then all of a sudden, though, fake people started using it. Like people with bad music. That's what I mean by fake people. People with bad music. And they were like, yo, I'm just building my brand. They didn't say, hey, I really love this song and stuff like this, and I'm just building my brand, you know, and then they try to convince you that they really like all these different type of songs that they made, you know, and I don't know, some of them convinced somebody, but At the same time, we do have to say that we are branding because we artists has to control all this stuff. They have to control the making of the physical making of the records. They have to control the promotion of them for the most part. You know, let me tell you something. One of the biggest hustles out there, and I'm saying this though because I find, and I could say this though, this might be a media mutation though. Might have to do it, but I find one of the most bullshit things the writer publicist. You know, a journalist publicist. I'm saying I find that to be one of the fakest things in the universe. You're writing about the music, but then we're supposed to believe you because you got paid to write about another song. So then what's the standard on this shit? You know? Be a publicist and leave the damn journalism game alone. You can't you got to understand that you lose your integrity in saying what's good if you promote something. You say, "Well, no, everything I promote I really like." It still is it's a contradiction. Now there are contradictions we embrace, right? A lot of the legendary journalists though wrote bios, including myself, for a lot of artists, right? But they were artists that we were feeling and that we respected, and so we wrote a bio for them so they could present their life to everyone else. So it's akin though to a very positive article about that individual that can be continuously used on loop as they sell their records. It's a different story. You know, when you go into the publicist game, though, a lot of it's going to depend on the quality, the quantity, really, of the money that you get. And so now things change. You tend now to like everything because there's a possibility you might promote something that you don't care about fully. You know, it's something to think about. But here's what I'm saying. I think about the listener, which is also myself. And when we think about this branding, right? How does the listener know what is sincere or not, though, in this whole gamut of work that someone has to do in promoting themselves? So you have, for the experiences, right? How does the listener identify sincerity in these experiences? So look, listen to this. It's not just the criminals or the lowlives or the 5%ers or the poor and black and brown people. The truth is, unless you're in one of those groups, right, there's always going to be something that you're not privy to, and now you have to decide the sincerity of whoever is sharing that. How do we do that? How does a journalist do that, let alone, how does a listener do that, let alone a journalist? You see? And that's why, in a lot of respects, though, this branding is always felt disingenuous. The publicity of certain things is almost often an insincere business, because it leaves the listener as a never-ending custody. You know, he's a custody. The listener has been left to being a custody, and it allows that. The reason it could work, and most artists, I'm saying the great artists to the shitty, music factory machine. Most of these listeners are not our people. The people that make this music or make the bad music or the good music. So it's okay almost to have a disrespect for the listener because we all group them in that level. And so what happens is that, and I find that insincere, music is made for certain reasons, but it is for everybody. And when you treat the listener like a custody, you know what I'm saying? Where he's not, and it's almost, you see that with the way artists themselves self-brand themselves on the Twitter, and you see that, and what happens is you see almost like a disrespect for the artist, for the listener out there. Like they're being pitched something, and it's almost like, nigga, I fooled you into buying this shit though, and you didn't really buy a record. And now that we have albums that are 7 songs long, 7 songs is about 19 minutes, 20 minutes, And I'm from New York though, like. That's not even a whole rush hour. You got to take me through rush hour. You know what I mean? You got to take me at least rush hour. You got to give me, if you're going to give me quality, give me 45 minutes. Give me 45 plus, Don't give me, don't play with me either. Don't give me no limit numbers. Don't give me 79 minute, 30-second albums, that fit on the edge of the CD corner. You know what I mean? And those pieces of shit are filler because it's all hustle. It's all hustle. And again, it makes the listener feel like a custody. 7 songs is supposed to be like quality, but now it feels like we're custy. And with hip hop, those things kind of become more glaring. The 2-minute song was invented 2 minutes, especially in the rock and roll era, because it was jukebox era. You'd play those songs again, you know? So you put more money in the jukebox, you know what I mean? And hear the good times roll, right? And you put more money in the jukebox. After a while, they just put mad money in the jukebox, you know? But, and so certain artists, though, like certain MCs, they took that on. Like, you know, Eric Sermon used to say he produces songs shorter. So if you hear a lot of Hit Squad shit, right? Like the Eric Sermon albums, some Redman stuff, those songs are short. They come in short, especially Eric Sermon's solo albums. 2 minutes to 3 minutes and stuff like that. But you didn't worry about it because he was giving you still 50 minutes of records, right? 50 minutes. And he was giving you incredible beats, right? That first Eric Sermon solo album, right? That's a crate right there, right? And but now with the artist, what is that? How do we deal with the listener more than a custy? But listen, one last question. I have access. No one has given me answers. I'm gonna keep asking it, right? You know, one of the listeners, you know, he told me that I throw shade really cleverly. You know what I mean? I took that as a compliment, though. Because I don't have time to distance particular individuals and shit. You know, because these motherfuckers have their own show. They're balling. They're making more money than me. Fuck them. You know what I mean? But I said this. I've been asking this question. I said, how can Ghostface Killer return? You know? How is he supposed to return? It's like a movie now. Like, he really is supposed to return with the amulet, like the movie, and just kill everybody. He's actually supposed to kill everybody with the 5, you know, the 5 elements and throw the amulet, because his entire vocal register of unstable highs, his inflections of pure soul, his slang wordplay, his cadence, his entire musical blueprint of beautiful soul samples on the rear of unique break work or riding alone, looped or chopped raw, they fuel the worst and they fuel some of the best music today. So what the hell is he supposed to do? And see, this is exactly what I had said before, what RZA was doing. So, like, when we see, like, RZA leaving and then RZA doing a lot of, like, going into rock and progressive measures, trying to learn, extending the measures of music that he was sampling to musically construct things that are longer than 4 measures, 5 measures, right? That he started with Bobby Digital, which is musically a great record. I love Bobby Digital, the first one. And the second one, I love that one too. But when you see all that, even though his exit from those hardcore classic era, seems premature, but this is now where we, if he minded and stretched it out, this is exactly where Ghostface is. Does he continue with this? If he finds the greatest soul records, other people might say, oh, he's just biting Rock Marcy, you know, or he's biting Ka and stuff. It's a hard way to go, you know? And it just leaves more intrigue about where Ghostface would come from this, though. But on that note, there's so much more to say. In the next show, I'll have more guests, more thoughts. And by the way, I'm also going to have details about You God's book. I actually read that a while ago and finished it. I have some details about a reggaeton assignment that I was given. A reggaeton assignment that I was given. Can you even believe that? And we still haven't gone through all these great 2000 LPs. From Lit Green, 38 Special, 8 Preem, Sleep Sinatra, Bugsy the God, A.G. Aguilar, and even West Side Gun and Cannabis. So on the next one, we will get you with all that. And the guests that I missed, hey, man, brother, we will build with you on the next one. So until next time, there'll be a lot more stories to tell, writings to recite, and records to rewind and reminisce. I'm your host, Sunez, and as always, the Power Right Show is a never respect fake broadcast. Peace.